Hey, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome back to Skyfire TV. I'm your host, CEO of Skyfire, Matt Sloan. We also have our co-host, Benjamin Kroll, our COO, joining us today. One of our longtime good friends, Deputy Chief of the Bargersville, Indiana Fire Department, Mike Pruitt. Mike, thanks for joining us today. We're very happy to have you on the show.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So first of all, can you tell us where Bargersville is? Because I think a lot of people do.
Bargersville sits about 15 miles south of Indianapolis. So we're in the metro area, the Indianapolis metro area.
Awesome.
So kind of a mix of an urban / rural community.
Very cool. Well, the reason that we wanted you to join us today is because we have been working together for probably 5 years now, I think. You were one of the earliest adopters, I would say, probably anywhere in the country. And what you set off there in the Indianapolis metro region was quite impressive. So just to give everybody a little bit of background, Mike started the program at Wayne Township Fire Department on the west side of Indianapolis. And then from there, it just grew exponentially to, I don't know, probably 20 departments in the metro area now?
At a minimum, 20. Yeah, it got real popular quick.
We always joke that we ought to open an office in the Indy area because we're there so often.
You were that close. Right?
Yeah, which it's a great problem to have. So no, we love it. And little known fact, Ben was actually born in Indianapolis. So
I was. I'm from there. And Mike, I got to apologize to you. You know, when we went out there to do your training, your initial training, that's when we had to do, if you remember, the private pilot ground school.
Yes.
For you guys to get the certification.
How can you forget?
Yeah. Different days, different times for sure.
It's changed a lot.
No, definitely changed quite a bit since then. So I think your old chief, Gene Conzen, was like the only one who ever actually went and took the written test.
He was.
And passed. First time.
Yeah, but not just for your department. I mean, of any of the students we trained across the country.
Yeah,
I think he might have been the only one that actually went and took the test. So.
Yeah, and then eventually they came out with this thing where the FAA just trusted us. And
right.
Because we were firefighters and police officers, they said, we trust you, so go fly. So,
you see how that's gone? No, I'm just kidding. It's gone.
It was a terrible test taker always anyhow, so it was actually good that we had some options there.
Yes. No, it's worked out quite nicely. Well, really appreciate you joining us. Really appreciate the support you've given us over the years too. So what we like to do on these things, as you've probably seen, let's just start by kind of talking about some of the use cases, because I think, this is still evolving. I mean, like I said, we've been working together for almost 5 years now, but we're still figuring stuff out. You guys are out there every day kind of breaking new ground with it. So what would you say the most common stuff is that you guys are doing with your aircraft at this point?
So most common stuff that we're doing, and this has been from the beginning, is probably assisting law enforcement. And this was kind of before law enforcement got into the UAV business, because obviously there was a little bit of community concern about privacy. So, I always joke with the law enforcement partners about this, that, if you see, I went to a couple community meetings and I held the drone and the community was like, oh, really cool. And I handed it to my police counterpart next to me and I said, now what do you think? And so there was just a change of emotion in the room to, hey, good old fireman's got this. What's he doing with it? He's doing all good with it. And so we ended up assisting law enforcement a lot. And then as the community got used to that idea, realized that, hey, we got helicopters flying over all the time. This is really not much different. Then we saw our law enforcement agencies totally embrace it. So the bulk of our business for a long time was going out and helping law enforcement search for missing persons, fugitives, and then we would get those fires occasionally, or a hazmat run where we needed to get eyes on, something, maybe an overturned tanker. Then we started doing a little bit on the side, but we got most of our experience assisting law enforcement.
Yeah, and that's like something really important to hit on right from the beginning, is that when you talk about a fire rescue drone program, you really ought to just assume that you're going to be also working with law enforcement. And so, we talk about this a lot because we teach these classes where it's like law enforcement tactics, and firefighters always go like, I don't need that. We're just a fire service. But truth be told, there's a good chance you're going to be out there helping law enforcement.
Yeah, we see more and more, and not only UAV, but so many other levels where our training and expertise is crossing the lines to work together in public safety for the overall good of everybody. So, we were very fortunate that our fire chief put no limitations on where we could go, who we could help. And we learned so much during that time period about UAVs, just from driving from one end of the state of Indiana to the other in the middle of the night, on SWAT callouts, missing persons, plane crashes. We got to do a little bit of all that, and we took a lot away from that.
Yeah, well, and that's really unique too. And I remember really well you and Eric Funkhauser, who's now your chief at Bargersville, when you guys were in separate departments before then. But I mean, you guys were literally like 2-3 o'clock in the morning, like running to a plane crash in northern Indiana, and then running down to southern Indiana. And it's not a small state.
No, it's not, especially lengthwise. And no drone callouts ever happened during the daytime hours. It was always after dark, middle of the night. And we were running 2 to 3 calls a week, not in our own communities, but everywhere else, assisting agencies. And so then when everybody else started buying drones, and our run load went from multiple call outs a week to literally nothing. So because everybody has them now. And so, so I'm glad we had that opportunity to make all those calls, because we did learn a lot. We were able to share that information with so many other agencies to help them as they started up their programs.
Yeah, I think that's remarkable. And one of the things that we tell people all the time is that if you don't use it, these skills sort of go away, and you need to practice them all the time. You guys, I guess you could call it a luxury, had the luxury of not having to do a lot of training because you were out there doing the real thing so often. So
yeah, we had OJT. We learned everything that you could do with the drone correctly, and we learned everything that you could do wrong with the drone. We've been on both sides of the fence, and we learned a lot. And I always made the comment to anybody that was buying a drone. I was like, well, it's like, you're probably going to crash one. It's given, and they look at you like, what do you mean? I was like, well, it'll probably happen. You're probably going to bump it into something until you get better with your UAV. So keep that in mind. Don't think that you're going to be Maverick from Top Gun right out of the gate, because we've seen a lot of those and we know what happens when that happens. So you really have to be careful starting out.
Yeah, I literally, of course, I will not name them, but literally watched some fire guys take a brand new drone out of a box and immediately put it into a bush. So about that, yeah, try not to do that.
When we bought ours, a lot of people were like, oh, what do we need those toys for? But then when we got them up and our battalion chiefs could see fires and law enforcement could see in the FLIR, they were just like, it immediately was a whole mindset change of the value of the UAVs.
Well, that's one of the things that's really interesting about sort of the way you've implemented it. You, at Wayne Township, were the PIO. And so being the public information officer, you not a battalion chief or anything like that, who, you weren't operationally fighting the fire, but your job was to share information. It turned out to be kind of a model going forward, because the people trust the PIO, right? You're the guy they come to for the information. That's the guy that the news people come up and ask questions. Was that a conscious decision, or it was just because you're the guy that wanted to do it? And do you think that was a good idea?
No, it's something I took an interest in a long, long time ago. I've been doing the PIO work for almost 20 years of my 35 years in the fire service. And so getting that tool to enhance my job, because news agencies were just starting to dabble in, they were getting rid of the helicopters, or flying them less at least, and they were starting to dabble in getting the UAVs. But what I was providing them that really kind of was a selling point is that I would shoot video and pictures from our scenes with my UAVs and share that with the news media. And that was gold. That only not enhanced us as an agency in the eye of the public, but it also gave the news media what they needed also. And so that helped I've always been very proactive about our media for the most part. And so it was kind of cool to be able to build that partnership and then see them purchase their own and come to us with questions, obviously. But so that was a big transition point also with the UAVs.
Awesome. Yeah, and another thing too that I think is really interesting about the way you guys have approached this, very much a regional resource. As you talked about, you were running all over the state. I guess it's statewide, not even regional. You also have a really close working relationship with state police. You and John, and how is that sort of factored into the number of calls, the types of calls, and sort of the level of trust that you get across the state?
So in the beginning, having some connections with the state police, having those personal relationships built prior to paid off for us in getting out and using our UAVs to assist the state police, whether it was an accident investigation on the interstate, again, whether it was a missing person, that we, as you mentioned earlier, had a plane crash in northern Indiana that we were involved in with not only state police, but FAA. And so having that relationship built there and them knowing what we had as far as equipment led them down the road to get their own also. So, like I said, now our business has kind of slowed down a little bit because state police has UAVs, Indianapolis Police Department has UAVs, our sheriff's department here in the county has UAVs, but we are always here for technical support. And, which that's a lot of it is questions. It's not necessarily these days, it's more people calling us going, hey, I'm running into this problem. We tried to do this. What do you think? And we're like, oh yeah, we've been there. We know exactly what the problem is. So, sharing those resources. And now we're working on building a database statewide that has all the UAVs. So if we get God forbid, a tornado comes through a section of Indiana and we need to do damage assessments, we have people in the state who've embraced damage assessments with UAVs from emergency management, fire, police. And so it's spilled over into that. So it's, and I've been on a few hurricanes and the aftermath, using UAVs in the aftermath has been huge for assessing damage and locating even people that might be missing.
Hey, Mike, just a kind of follow up on some of this and sort of kind of looking forward. What have been some of the challenges you've run into? Like what do you see as like some of the things that can improve in any parts of it? The equipment, the maybe regulation, like what do you see kind of looking forward that would be helpful?
Well, I think that, one of the things we've always seen kind of rough is broadcasting your live video in real time and making sure that you can get that back to a command post or some type of operations center, being able to give them real-time view. And many companies have stepped up to the plate to do that and help with getting that video broadcasted. And so I think that that's been huge and probably an area that probably needs to be refined the most, because the equipment on these aircraft is solid. So flight time is obviously, getting longer flight times out of aircraft, but the camera equipment that we're using is just awesome. You get spoiled when you get the top end and you go back and you look at the low end FLIR cameras and you're just like, I don't even want to fly that one again because I've seen the nicer equipment. So I'm just amazed with the new attachments, the new capabilities that they add to these aircraft as we move forward. I mean, in the beginning, we couldn't buy enough. We were just like, oh my God, I got to have that one. I got to have that. Oh, look at that little attachment. We got to have that. Finally, we had to like go through a withdrawal period where, we just like, all right, hang on, pump the brakes a little bit here. Let's figure out what we need for our agency and assessing. So I would say to any agency is assess what you need to do your job every day, because not everybody needs every bells and whistle that's out there. But if you're an agency that needs to transmit live video back, then you need to focus on that. If you're, delivering equipment or PFDs like we did to a drowning person before, then focus on, release equipment and that type of equipment. So you just really got to analyze what your needs truly are for your agency, so you don't end up with all this equipment, all this money invested in things. And then next thing you know, it's just like technology. You buy it one week and it's outdated the next. So there's something new. So I'm just always amazed by the new stuff that comes out all the time. But I think transmitting what the aircraft is seeing, longer flight times, I think as those get better and those programs become more integrated into our systems, then it'll just continue to roll.
Has that been an issue for you out there, especially seeing as Indiana is, parts of it are pretty rural? Have you had connectivity issues?
There have been connectivity issues at times, and it comes down to cell service. If I'm communicating with a satellite, then if the satellite's aimed at me and I got good satellite coverage, and I can send that video anywhere. But typically what we run into is just like on your cell phone, you don't have enough bars, your video isn't going to be good. You're going to cut out. You're going to have a lot of glitches. So I think that, if you have a system in place, like I know a lot of the news stations use systems where it'll scan multiple, cell companies. So cell services. So it'll lock in on whatever the strongest one is to get it back to the station. So I think as technology improves there, just depending on where you're at. So if your AT&T is the best service in a rural community and nobody else's works, then you have the ability to go onto that system. And guys are doing that now, but they're kind of doing it in a rough way.
I just want to say too, I noticed our buddy Travis Hull is on from FirstNet. So I hope you're listening, Travis. And Indiana's a big early adopter from FirstNet.
I'll expect that check from Mitch.
Hey, Mike, you mentioned training, and one, I want to thank you and, definitely Wayne Township and Bargersville, really. You guys kind of helped us get our feet wet, when it came to training, when nobody really knew how to do training or what this looked like, or how people needed to do recurrent training and continuing education, those kinds of things. Can you just talk about that for a minute? How important that's been to you and kind of what that means for you guys?
So in the beginning, it was very interesting because you guys were like the solo agency out there when we started looking at UAVs. And we walked through the fire department instructors conference the first time we met. And my chief, who was a real techie geek, said, we need to stop and talk. And so we were just kind of being goofy about, well, wouldn't it be funny to have a drone? And then all of a sudden this talk got real serious. And so when we started talking to you guys, I mean, you guys were on the cutting edge too. You were learning every day that went by. You guys were learning something new because I know there were conversations that I looked at you guys for an answer and we had to solve it together because we hadn't crossed that border yet or hadn't crossed that line. But the training that we received from you guys, and not just the training, but the continued support afterwards. And I think that there are a lot of people out there that want to train people to fly UAVs and, what to buy and make the recommendations. But from getting all the COA information taken care of for us, step by step, getting us through that process. I mean, I saw so many agencies try to do that on their own. And looking back, they wish, gosh, why didn't we just hire somebody to help us through that process? And we hit every benchmark with you guys from the training in the beginning to getting our COA and the continued support, 24/7. If we ran into a glitch, ran into a problem, you guys had an answer for it. And that was the most impressive and most comfortable thing for me and working with you guys, and which obviously, it developed into a friendship with the company also. And so, and trusting what you guys were doing. So that was big for us when it came to training, because there were a lot of people out there that were trying to start up these little bitty companies to teach people how to fly drones, but they weren't tied in as deep in public safety. You guys got involved with public safety and you were just nerdy enough to go out there and learn everything you need to learn about it to make it successful. I say that in good sense. All right.
yeah, we'll take that as a compliment too. And the check is on its way to you now too. So everything's in a new check today. So. But no, I appreciate you saying that. And, that's obviously been our mission from the beginning, is just, the good information, because for better or for worse, there's just not a lot of it out there. And then I think, everybody wants to do the right thing, and just making sure that everybody knows how to do that is not always the easiest thing in the world. So no, I appreciate you saying that, and spreading the word around Indiana too, because as I said, we work up there quite a bit. What kind of recurrent training do you guys do? Just keeping with this training theme, what are you guys out there? How do you practice? I mean, are you guys using a NIST tower, or are you, just doing more on the job training, or what's that look like?
We've done everything to NIST towers. We've trained in wooded areas. We've trained in like urban setting where there's more buildings. So we try to change it up all the time. Now, since I took the deputy chief's position here, we actually just had a drone call out the other day, and I was going to fly the Mavic. We were doing tower antenna rescue training. And so one of the things I wanted to do is fly the Mavic up and get some pictures of the guys up on the 300-foot tower doing their training. And I hadn't had a drone out in a while. And this just tells you, because I have a couple guys here on the department that run with the drones and do all the drone work most of the time. So I just got a simple thing like the Mavic out, and it took me a second to get my bearings right on my controls and making sure I had my mindset, because I was using it so much at one point that I could do this stuff in my sleep, and I'd recognize things and I'd recognize problems. So I got a little rusty for not being on the drone very much. So I realized then, hey, I need to get my drone back out and start training with it a little bit more. But we usually have the drones out once every week, doing something with it, whether it's the Matrice or whether it's our Mavics. We're out flying them, trying different things, situational, especially with weather environments, flying them in the wind a little bit, see what that Mavic can do, what's the Matrice going to do today, waiting for a downpour. Let's see if we can fly the Matrice in a complete downpour monsoon, which I don't recommend to anyone for that matter. But, we've flown them in conditions like that because we wanted to just test the waters and see what it would do. So, when somebody called us, we could say, yeah, we can fly that, because and this has been me pretty much, even when I was Wayne Township and here, I've been willing to push the envelope with the drones, as long as we weren't jeopardizing the safety of any citizen. But if we had a serious situation going on, I always had the support of the chiefs to go, you know what, if we got to get up and we got to get the job done, we're going to push these drones to the max and see what happens. And in some cases we flew when nobody else would fly, and had success. And so we may have got lucky, or just solid equipment and good pilots that we were using.
So one more question about the training, and then we'll move on. But you and I had a conversation at one point about very specific training around how to use the FLIR camera, best settings and all that. I mean, that's something we're working on. Of course, we have the advanced training class that we were planning on doing up there until we got into this new coronavirus world. But have you guys done much specific training on that? And what recommendations do you have for people who are doing a lot of search and rescue or using the FLIR a lot?
Especially when you're talking about FLIR operations. I sent a lot of police officers on wild goose chases into wooded areas and fields looking for suspects, only to get there and find out that it was a manhole cover or this is a steaming pile of horse manure in the middle of a field that I had at least 10 police officers surrounding this. And in that moment when the officers walk around it and nothing happens, and you're about ready to get the radio report back. So over time, especially with new operators, they see these things on the FLIR and they're like, oh my gosh, there it is. There's something hot. It's moving, but over time, as you practice, especially with that FLIR camera, you start to recognize things. You go, nah, that's not giving off the amount of heat of a human body, or it's not moving, or that's a transformer that's on a telephone pole that looks like somebody's hiding behind the car. You start getting better at recognizing those things, because you can have people watching on a big screen and they're like, what's that? What's that? And you find yourself, after doing it long enough, you go, nah, that's a rabbit. That's a deer bedding down. Just little things that you learn. And that comes from training and using the equipment and putting it in different environments.
That's such a great point, Mike. I can't tell you how many times I've talked to people and they've been like, cool, I've got the FLIR now, I'll be able to see everything. But that's just not the case, right? That's such a great point. You have to really learn it.
Yeah, you do. You got to be able to separate. You got to make sure you get your settings, using your right template that you want, for your thermal template, to make sure that you're using, black hot, white hot, whatever you're going to use that works best for that environment that you're working in that day. Because I loved flying FLIR when it was 10 degrees out, because anything that was hot was going to show up. Now we're in summer, 90 degrees out, everything's hot. Unless you're flying at night, it gets difficult to see everything. It's still, rocks hold heat. I sent deputies into a woods last night, or one night. They were looking for a fugitive that had run from them. He becomes suicidal. He shut his phone off. I was sure I had this guy. It was the only thing in the whole area that was giving off heat. You know what it was? A rotting log. It was that decomposing log was giving off enough heat that showed up on that FLIR camera, and these guys traipsed like a good half mile into some rough terrain to this rotting log. And so I learned a lot from those incidents.
It's another tool in the tool bag, just like any other thing that you've got. It only does so much. It's not the magic bullet.
But we've had success in finding people also, and that's where it really pays off, when you protect the life of a police officer, because he can't see what you can see, and you find the suspect. You can see him hiding. You identify.
Speaking of which, I want to play this video, if you're okay with it.
Oh yeah. This is
this is a great one. Can you tell us what's going on here?
Yeah, so this is kind of funny because there's an individual hiding there. You'll see him in the center screen. He's laying down, and this is the IMPD canine officer who is this dog's tracking. And so they come up to this guy. They're looking for a guy with a warrant in the area. The dog eventually gets over to him. He decides, yeah, I'm done. I'm out. The funny thing was, this wasn't even the guy they were looking for. This is a guy who had a warrant, thought he had a warrant out, and fled from his house and went and hid in the field. But it just shows you, the dog picked up on his adrenaline. The dog tracked him. And, but this guy thought he had a warrant out for his arrest. He didn't even have anything. This wasn't even the guy we were looking for. But the camera locked in on this guy, and we found him. And so this is stuff where it pays off for law enforcement huge when they can spot something like that and watch the officers, guide them in. They can tell if the suspect's going to make a big move or not. So very valuable tool in this case right here.
Yeah, and what I love about this video, and I use it in a lot of our classes, is like this guy thinks he's doing a great job, like hiding behind this tree. Yes. Meanwhile, you guys you're like, I think your actual quote was, "We led the puppy right to him." So
he had no idea that the drone was up above, watching him do everything. And so, I don't know if you remember the video of the guy jumping into the river.
Yeah, I was trying to find it.
Another case of a guy fled, jumped into a river. I followed him with the drone all the way down the river. We thought he was basically going to drown. It was in the middle of the night. He kept hiding along. He finally figured out the water was a little too rough, a little too cold. So he swam over the corner and he was hiding down in very thick brush, but I could still see him. And he got to meet Mr. Canine at that time. And even when the canine got a hold of him, he had actually been involved in maybe a missing persons case, but he met the canine. We were able to guide the officers in, find him, and they were able to arrest that individual. So and this was early on, back when we were first bringing the drones out for people to use and see them work.
Yeah, and I remember, talking about having learning experiences together. That was a great learning experience for all of us because we were wondering what would happen when you got to the water. Obviously, you can't see through the water, but you were seeing his head bobbing up and down as he floated down.
Just enough that you could see him come up. And then it was like during flood stage. So I actually didn't think he was going to survive. And we moved other drones downstream to intercept because I knew I would only be able to go so far. And I was fortunate to catch all that. Usually when you end up finding the individual, you're about at the bottom of your battery usage and you got to come back. And that's always a good idea about having a second drone ready to launch or locked on if you're getting ready to come back. So
when the stuff that you guys were doing, up in Wayne Township, obviously most people aren't familiar with the geography, but you weren't very far from Indianapolis International Airport. You were in a Class C airspace. What was that like? What was your relationship with the airport like? Obviously,
everything was good with the airport. Obviously there was a restricted airspace. Like if we were anywhere close to the airport within I'd say usually about a quarter mile of the airport proper, we weren't taking off. We just didn't fly. But we never had any issues with the airport. At the altitudes we were flying, if our drone conflicted with an aircraft where we were flying and that aircraft was that low, we got bigger problems with my drone being in the air. So, but it was just a good relationship to maintain with the airport and operating. We knew where we could operate and where we didn't want to operate, but so no, it was always good relationship there. Plainfield, which was on the town of Plainfield, which was on the western side of the airport. We were on the north side of the airport. And so we both operated drones in those flight patterns, but you just couldn't get in too close to the airport or there's just like a no-fly zone in place completely.
And speaking of relationships, going back to, because you're the PIO, you have a great relationship with the media, but you took it a step further because the media are also flying drones. And so you guys actually established some sort of a working group, right? So you could kind of coordinate who's going to do what.
We started having a lot of discussions because what we didn't want to get into was air conflict and I wasn't worried about the media as much. I was worried about the hobbyist that was wanting to fly in between the media drones and our drones. So, we talked about, when we arrive on the scene, everybody takes a little bit different flight level. so that, everybody gets what they want, at least between us and the media. And then we can't always control that, the renegade drone that wants to come in and get his shot. But we did have an open communication. If we were flying drones together, we always talked about, hey, if we're going to be there together and you're going to be flying drones, let's put the drone operators together so that where everybody's at. I work the Indianapolis 500 every year, and there's always a no-fly zone in place for all aircraft over the Motor Speedway during that, or the Brickyard 400. And every once in a while, we would get that one drone that an individual probably had too many beers and decided he wanted to fly his Phantom into the track. And, the funny thing is I got so used to looking at all different model drones, I could look through my binoculars and go, yeah, that's a Phantom. That's a Mavic. I could tell what there was. And it never was anything that was, criminal in any mind. It's just people just wanting to get a shot, but you weren't supposed to be doing that. And so they keep a very close eye on that stuff, especially in those types of events, and rightfully so.
Yeah, and of course we ran into that with the Super Bowl as well. 4 days of
Yes.
TFR over the city, and 57 people, I think it was.
Yeah, almost 60. Yeah,
Yeah, it was
confiscated.
great. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, they're fun tools, and I know a lot of people that have them, and I would say 80% of everybody out there operates them with some common sense. They're scared of them enough that they operate them with some good sense. But then you have the 20% that, job security is what I call it, that can't figure out anything in life to keep themselves safe for others. And so it's called job security in many cases. But
Speaking of job security, one day I will have to figure out how you managed to run over Bargersville's drone and then still get a job there as the deputy chief.
I mentioned that early on that, I've done everything wrong and done everything right with drones. And that was an unfortunate situation for Chief Hunter. Could have left these drones sitting in the street, but I was trying to save another agency's drone that was having problems and getting ready to do a very hard landing, but it was still flying. And I thought, if I can get there to where it's at, I'll catch this thing. It was, because I've caught them before, grabbing that running gear. It's kind of a iffy thing, but as I backed my truck out, which my drone I hadn't even put up yet, so I was in good shape. What I didn't realize was Chief Funkhauser had set his drone out on the ground. So when I thought I ran over the plastic case that held the drone. And so I got to where I thought I could see the drone. The drone had already went down somewhere. And when I came back, I was like, well, sorry, I missed that drone. And Chief Funkhauser was like, well, you missed that one, but you didn't miss that one. And then it was the worst feeling in the world. So
Yeah.
Hey, Mike, don't let Matt give you a hard time about this. He could tell you a story about a drone near a river one time.
Here we go. That is a story for another podcast.
I mean, as like I said, anybody that's gonna have drones, never trust a drone 100%. I mean, and usually it's operator error. I would say operator error gets people in trouble more than anything.
Yeah. No, I would totally agree with that. Ben's got a story he could tell you about flying a drone near a river.
And specifically, when you talk about pilot error, I mean, I think the ones, I don't know if you've seen this, but battery management, or poor battery management, gets people in a lot of trouble in a lot of different situations.
And again, I've been there and done that, where I was like, I can stay a little longer. I can stay a little longer. I can stay a little longer. And then it's auto landing on me. And I'm like, this is not good. This is not good. And so then I'm having to call a fire department out at, when it's cold, to carry a ground ladder into the woods to fish my matrice out of the top of a tree. So, I mean, there's 90% of everything that we've ever done with the drone has been successful and great. And then there's that 10% learning curve that I've gone through, in flying these drones. But like I said, we've learned a lot, and we've been able to share a lot with other agencies.
Yeah, that's the most important thing. Obviously, do everything you can to keep it safe. Things are going to happen. Have a plan in place, and then learn something from that mistake. So
safety is paramount. Safety checklist. Don't be the guy that shows up, grabs his drone, and skips over all the safety procedures, and checking your aircraft and making sure it's completely ready to go before it takes off. you will get yourself in trouble if you do that.
Well, I guess the last thing I want to kind of touch on is just, there's, if people are watching or see this, not live in the future, a department that's looking to start their program, what would you say now, having been doing it for so long? Where do you start?
Well, a lot of people always ask, when I started Wayne Township, people are like, did you get a grant to buy your drones, or did you? Well, unfortunately, in our case, we just bought them. But we had to decide what we needed first. Do I need a Matrice 210? A massive aircraft, not a massive aircraft, but a big aircraft. Do I need this aircraft with dual camera systems, or can I go with, a Mavic that will do FLIR, or, has a good zoom camera on it? Deciding what platform that you're going to be using is huge. So because that's going to be big money. Mavic is very affordable especially when you're talking about the Mavic, and then some of the smaller models that DJI, and I don't mean to just talk about the DJI products because there's so many other products out there, but deciding what you need for the job you're going to do. Our sheriff's department here in the county, they fly, I think they've got 6 or 7 Mavics, and that's all they fly. And then we have the Matrice here at Bargersville. We have the Inspire, the old reliable Inspire one, and then we have Mavics. So, but just decide how much money you want to spend. If you got grants in the community, go after them. We've had so many agencies around us that have purchased drones through, grant programs, whether it was their local in the county or a statewide grant. So but first of all, you got to figure out what you're going to use it for. If you do that, you may find out you really don't need a whole lot. If you're just going to be flying and over fires and using FLIR to find hot spots, why, you don't have to spend a lot of money at all. But if you're getting into everything, water rescue and carrying payloads and searching for bad guys and long time battery life, and just there's a lot of things that you can get into and spend money on.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And then follow that purchase up with training and the right FAA authorization.
Yeah. There's many agencies out there that are flying with no FAA authorization, with no COAs. They bought them and they're flying them, and they'll probably keep flying those. But if something happens, you could cause damage or injury to anyone. They're going to come back and look at that. And I don't think that when you're looking at the risk benefit, I think it's just that you go and you follow the rules that the FAA, because they're not difficult to follow. It's amazing how cooperative our office was in Indianapolis when we were starting down the road of just working with the FAA on getting going. I mean, they were still learning things too. That was amazing about, we were all in the same boat together. Everybody's like, I don't know about that one. I'll have to ask somebody. And they'd ask somebody and say, well, he didn't know either, but we'll see what that means. So it was good to see the FAA adjust things to make it more user-friendly, but also trying to keep safety in mind.
Yeah, and I mean, I think, that's, to the testament to the FAA's, trying to catch up on this stuff as much as we are. They've in some ways been doing it for a long time. In other ways, we're challenging them every day to figure out new stuff. Sometimes they appreciate it, other times not so much. But a couple of conversations you had this week, Ben, probably, just ruffled a few feathers. But I think it's good. I mean, we're all trying to figure this out, and we're all trying to do the right thing. And our experience with the FAA has been, if you're asking the questions, you've already taken the first step, which is you're telling them you're doing it and trying to figure out how to do it right. So that's critical. Whether you're operating under a COA or Part 107, or that it sort of doesn't matter. It's just the fact that you're going out of your way to make sure that you're following the rules, and making sure that you get the good training to go along with it. Because unfortunately, we see a lot of not necessarily agency-wide, but a lot of people will go and get their 107, and that's kind of all they do. That should be the bare minimum. Go take the test, prove that you can take a test, but then you got to actually learn how to fly the drone and prove that you can do that. And that's where the hand training really comes in.
I think the other area that's probably a little weak right now is service. When something breaks, making repairs. Some people may be able to repair them on their own, but it would be nice to see more local service dealers pop up. So whatever brand drone you're working on, you could take it there and get parts, get it fixed like you do with your car. With the DJI product, most of the time we got to send it back to DJI, which They've improved their turnaround times for getting things repaired, and so. But I think service when you're getting them repaired is big too.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things that the industry is trying to do a better job of now that we've sort of identified who's using what types of aircraft and how much service they're really going to need. Because I think part of the issue has been sort of we don't know what the service life is of these things because they haven't been around long enough. But I think we're starting to figure that out because some of these models have been around for 3-4 years now. We're seeing where the wear and tear is happening. So. Yeah, well, this has been great, Mike. Is there anything else we didn't cover that you wanted to add, or Ben, anything you wanted to jump in?
I just got one more question for you, Mike, just real quick. And I know we were talking about some of these specific kind of stories. Do you have anything? Is there anything that like jumps out at you? Some event that you were at that really the drone really made a difference, or impacted you in some way?
Yeah. So Hurricane Irma. In the Florida Keys, when it hit the Florida Keys, I personally didn't have a drone there with me, but one of the Florida search and rescue teams did. And, we were covering a lot of area doing hasty searches, which is basically a down and dirty quick search of neighborhoods and heavily damaged neighborhoods, trying to get damage assessments and look for anybody that might be in those neighborhoods. Well, one of the Florida teams had their drone flying in Inspire 1. And they were covering so much ground when it came to damage assessment, being able to get a big picture view because we didn't have helicopters available to us. So we were on the road trying to assess things. And that was very difficult. But the drone information, the pictures there were significant to the point that you could see, oh my gosh, Mexico Beach was no different down in the Florida Panhandle when I was down there. There were UAVs there working. And, some of the actually, I think FirstNet had some work going on down there with UAVs down there. And so those big picture items were the most impressive things that I saw that these drones are being used for in those situations.
Fascinating. Yeah, that's super interesting, and how important that data becomes in those situations. Wow. Yeah, that's really cool. Thank you for sharing that.
And that's an interesting topic for another webinar. The using drones in natural disasters and stuff. I know it's something that FEMA is working on and kind of standardizing, because I think the issue is you guys have great training, but there may be a department that shows up, to one of these disasters who may not have great training or may not know how to map, or, so trying to standardize all that stuff, I think, has been kind of the issue. Well, thanks, Mike. As always, I mean, you have great wisdom to share, and I know we've probably sent 400 people to you to kind of pick your brain about this. So now hopefully we can hit a few of them all at once with the video. So.
No, anytime. I like to talk about UAVs, and like I said, I've got a few war stories to share along the way. So just like many others do.
And you're no worse for the wear after 5 years of doing it. Well, maybe a little worse, but not too bad. You've survived. So
I've survived.
Well, indeed. Well, thank you guys both so much. As always, it's great to chat with you, and hope everything's going well there in Indiana, and you guys are adjusting to this new normal. And we look forward to keeping up with how your program goes and your coroner's race. For those of you who don't know, Mike is running for coroner for Johnson County, Indiana.
Add it to the list of things to do. My wife.
Yes, exactly right. You have about 17 jobs now, so one more is going to be great.
You can't live forever. You got to try something. You got to try something new all the time. So.
And one of these days you're going to find something you're good at. So.
Oh man.
I joke. We're friends. As he said it early on, we've developed a friendship now. So I'm just kidding.
I hope the temperature gets up to about 120 degrees down there in Atlanta for a while.
Oh, it will. Don't you worry. And I'm down in Florida right now, and it's definitely going to be 120.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Matt's slumming it at the beach right now.
Oh yeah. I would like to be able to get away to the beach, but I'm too busy here. To me, iron's in the fire.
Yeah. No, for sure. Well, that's where the 17 jobs come in. So.
Yes.
Well, guys, I appreciate it. Let's do this again soon. And for those of you watching on the interwebs, you can contact us if you have any questions. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. You can email us, call us, text us. Still not on TikTok. So thank you guys very much. We'll talk to you soon. And
thanks, Mike.
We'll see you next time.